50% of the other projects. So can he use a different treatment for that, or he has to keep the treatment same across all projects?
Okay. Everybody heard the question? Anyone would want to give it a go? Very simple. I think some part of this we have already discussed. In some context, we will discuss the same thing today as well as a part of the case. But it's okay. We can discuss it just right now and just get it done with. Any opinion on this? Anyone?
Sir, so the consistency concept, it doesn't apply to like all the projects. It's like for one project, you have to follow one principle over the years.
Yes, that's it. You understood the question and the response? So it's not mandatory for you to adopt the same method for all the revenue streams. In fact, if you remember the last part of the case today, that is of the computer manufacturer. Did you guys manage to read the case, by the way? So last part says what? That the computer manufacturer is manufacturing in two different markets. For one of the market, they are following an existing method, let's say delivery method. Now they think that situation is different in the new market. Can they go ahead and adopt a more conservative method? So the answer is yes, definitely they can. Why? Because consistency doesn't mean that same method across the organization. It just means that for a specific reason, if you have chosen a method, then year after year for the same reason, stick with the same method. That's all. Okay. If it is clear up till here, it's good. If not, then still in a little bit of extra detail, we'll discuss it once again when we come to the case. Okay. So you can hold on to it a little bit longer for now. Yeah. Any more questions?
So just one question.
So
for example, in the oil rigs case, or in case of like a long project like that, so across different projects, we can adopt different methods of revenue recognition, provided we have a reason for it.
Provided what?
Provided we have a valid reason for it.
Yes, that's exactly the bottom line. Provided you have a valid reason. Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything else? All good. Okay, so let us continue from that today. So what today we'll do is that we'll cover very quickly rest of the three methods, that is production method, installment method, and delivery method, and then we'll come back to the case. So if you have noticed, so far what we have discussed is two methods which primarily were for those kind of situations where a work spans more than one accounting period. So your percentage of completion method as well as completed contract method, these two were alternatives for those situations where a work spans more than one accounting period. Now these three are alternatives for those situations where the work does not span more than one accounting period. Okay, so let's say your retailer organizations, your wholesale organization, or simple manufacturers, or let's say service companies, wherein the service is delivered within a month or 2 months or within the same accounting period. So there we have three alternatives. In fact, we will see that there is a variation to this one also. So we'll discuss all of these. What we are going to see here is that across these 3.5 methods, why I say 3.5 is that there is a variation of installment also, that also we'll discuss. Across these methods, the only differing point is the degree to which you implement your conservatism concept. What does conservatism means? Conservatism means that you want to be as strict as possible to your to preparation of accounting statements. So we'll see that these different methods will just lie on different places on this continuum. Let's say by negative infinity, I want to denote that these would be the reasons where you are giving least consideration to conservatism, and wherein in this direction, let's say you are giving too much consideration to conservatism. Then I can plot these methods on this continuum. Now what do the methods say, and then I'll elaborate. The first one says, production method says that you can go ahead and recognize a revenue in a period in which the production is done. Now if I wanted to analyze the degree of conservatism of that, I would say that very little amount of conservatism is there in this kind of a method, production method. Why? Because the moment you have produced something, you are treating it as if it is being sold. Okay. So I'll prepare an example to illustrate what am I talking about. Let us say, let's continue our example of Big Bazaar. Let us say Big Bazaar is making a sale of 5,000. And how things happened is like this. Let's say in year 1, let's say, okay, let me extend it here. Let's say in year 1, 2, 3, and 4. So in year 1, you received the order and you did the production done. You got the production done. So production happened in year 1 and order also got received in year 1. Let's say year 2, the delivery happened. Let's say in year 3, let's say 40% of the revenue was received, and in year 4, let's say remaining 60% of the revenue was received. How we would recognize the revenue in this example under these different methods is what I'm going to demonstrate. So production method, very simple. Recognize the revenue in the period in which production happened. So by our example, production happened in the first year. So we will recognize the revenue in first year. So let me also imagine a number of cost of goods sold. Let's say to produce this 5,000 sale, I spent 2,500 in production. So my cost of goods sold is, let's say, or expenses. It can include other things also. Let's say my expenses were 2,500. So when are you going to show this profit of 2,500? This is how things will be shown under production method. So let's say this is my sales minus expenses will be what? Your profit. So under production method, let's say year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. So under production method, everything will come in year 1 itself. I will show a sale of 5,000. I will show an expense of 2,500, and I will say that in year 1, I got a profit of 2,500. Whereas in year 2, for this sale, there will be nothing that will be shown. In year 3 also for this sale, there will be nothing that will be shown. Let me contrast this to other methods, then you will understand what am I talking about. So let us contrast this to this with a delivery method. So if I wanted to plot this into this continuum of conservatism, degree of conservatism, after production method, a little bit of more conservative method is delivery method, in which we recognize the revenue not when the production is made, but rather when the delivery is done. So in our example, delivery happened in second year. So what we will do is that we will not recognize any revenue in the year of order received, any expense in the year of order received. Rather, everything will be recognized as revenue in the year in which you have delivered the goods. So 5,000 of revenue, subtract 2,500 of expense and 2,500 of profit. What changed from method of production method to delivery method? The timing changed. In production method, you showed the 2,000 profit in first year, whereas in the second method, you are showing the 2,500 profit in the second year. That is under delivery method, the timing has changed. You will see that in all the methods, what does the managerial discretion do? Managerial discretion will only be capable of changing the timing in which you are going to show the profits. It will not be able to pluck profit out of thin air. That part is not possible. For that, maybe they will have to indulge in fraud or something. But even within the given same circumstances, same situation of the transactions, still they can influence what? They can influence the timing in which they show the profits. Fine. Let me contrast this with the installment method. So installment method is even more conservative approach. Installment method. What does that say? That says that I will not recognize the revenue when the production happened. I would not recognize the revenue. Sorry. Yeah. I will not recognize the revenue even when the delivery happened. Rather, I will recognize the revenue when the installments got received. If they got received in parts, then in that proportion itself, I will recognize the revenue. For example, in the illustration that we have assumed, 40% of the revenue was received in year 3 and 60% of the revenue was received in year 4. So in this proportion, we will recognize this revenue, 5,000. So let's go ahead and do it. So under installment method in year 1, what we will show? Nothing. No profit, no expense. No revenue, no expense. In year 2, no revenue, no expense. Notice that here the production was done. Notice here the delivery was also done. But if you are following installment method, you wouldn't show anything here. Whereas in year 3, what you would do is, in year 3, you would show a revenue of 40% of the total revenue. So 5,000 ka 40%. That is, you will show 2,000 of profit, sales here, not profit, sales here. And the remaining 3,000, that is remaining 60% will be shown here. So what is happening here in the installment method? In the installment method, we are recognizing the revenue in the proportion in which it was received, excuse me, and the year in which it was received. Fine. Now the installment method and its variant differ from just in a slight bit. Installment method says that when you are recognizing the revenue, match the expenses also in the same proportion. So apply for cost, apply the matching concept. That means what was our total cost? Total cost was 2,500. So when in third year you recognize revenue 40%, so expense also should be recognized 40%. That's what installment method says. Okay, so we will recognize 40% of 2,500, that is 1,000. And we would say that in third year under this method, you made a profit of 1,000. And similarly, you will recognize 60% of the expenses in fourth year. Why are you recognizing 60% here? Because you are matching the revenue with the expenses. So you will show 1,500 expense here, and you will say that a profit of 1,500 was made in fourth year. Let's go and add all the profits across all the 4 years under installment method. You will say once again the total profit continues to be 2,500. So profit amount has not changed. What has changed is the time or the period in which you are showing the profit. Fine. Let us discuss the variant of the installment method, which is called a cost recovery method. Cost recovery. Cost recovery method is even more conservative than installment method. So if I wanted to plot it here, the cost recovery would be the extreme right of all these methods, cost recovery. Wherein for revenue, we are assuming the installment method, but for expenses, we are showing, or we are going to recognize the expense in the period in which it was incurred. So you are being extra conservative. So if I wanted to compare all these methods, least conservatism here, somewhat higher conservatism here, even higher conservatism here, and maximum conservatism here. How are you going to show it in the income statement? Let's see. So in the year in which you have received the order and you have done the production, in that year itself under the cost recovery method, you will not show any revenue, but you will show the entire expense. So you will say that you had a loss of 2,500 in the first year. In the second year under this method, what are you going to show? No revenue and no expense. In third year, how we are going to show the same things under this method of cost recovery? Revenue of 2,000 and no expense. So you will say that 2,000 of profit happened in third year. Why no expense? Because all the expense pertaining to this sale has already been recognized here. And similarly, you can understand that how things would look in the fourth year. In the fourth year, you would show under this method a revenue of 3,000, no expenses, so a profit of 3,000 was made in fourth year. Now let us compare this with the rest of the methods. If you see that even now the total of the profit remains 2,500. So add this 3,000 and 2,000 and subtract 2,500. You will see that once again you have shown profit of 2,500 only across the 4 years. The timing is different. Fine. So this is what these 3.5 or 4 methods say. Now let's go and do a very quick discussion about when does which one make more sense? When do we adopt which method? Okay, so rather than me telling, can all of you give your opinion that in what situation I would use, let's say, production method, what situation I will use, installment method, what situation I'll use, delivery, and what situation I should use cost recovery method. Any
So production method, when we start making the product, when we are sure of the price, we do, like as in agriculture, when minimum price if the government is giving, then farmers can recognize the revenue.
Okay, good example. So basically what he's mentioning is, who was saying, Hemdeep was saying? What Hem was saying is that production method you can implement in situation where you are sure that you are going to get the revenue. For example, let's say you are a farmer and for your produce MSP is provided. Then you can go ahead and recognize production method. Okay, we'll come back to this. Okay, let's finish this point. No need to come back. Any issues here? Can we go ahead and do it? Everybody understands what is MSP? Okay, just a quick reminder once again. I see many of the videos turned off. So CRs, can you just remind the class before every class, before start of the every class, at least my classes, just to keep this on. Otherwise, I just lost a perspective of whatever is being discussed. Are you able to follow it or not? So I don't know how many times I need to repeat it.
We'll drop a reminder. Sure.
Yeah. Go ahead. So any opinion that any issue, can I implement production method now? Let's say I have an MSP. So you guys have heard of the meaning of the word MSP? Government is promising that this is the price we will pay for your produce. Can I go ahead and use the production method?
As long as we know that the government won't, default. I mean, they won't
Okay.
break the promise.
Okay. Depend upon what kind of government you are dealing with. Okay, fine. Maybe if you are in Sudan or let's say Afghanistan or somewhere that you don't know whether tomorrow the government will be something different. So okay, fine, fair enough. Anything else that you need to know or any other condition?
In India, the monsoon, sir, whether the crops will
come or not. So I think I'm assuming for production method, at least you are waiting for production at least. You're not imagining that I have put the seeds and suddenly I'm recognizing the revenue. I think that part you are doing.
So in the production method, are we saying when the harvest is completed, then we are assuming it, or when you're saying when you're sowing the seeds, we are assuming it?
When do you think production happened?
After the harvest, right?
So I
the
think
crop
that's
is already
very
there.
obvious to assume. Yeah. Just because you sown the seed and let's say the chidiya chug gayi khet happens, what will you do? Sowing seed doesn't mean that you have a harvest, right? What if locusts come and eat everything? What if you forgot to water your plants? Right? Okay. Let's say you have the produce. Can you implement? I was assuming that at least this part was self-explanatory, that you need to have the produce. Okay. Now point is that just at the moment you have the produce, can you recognize the revenue in case of MSP, or do you need something else? Okay,
So there are other things like, for example, there is during distribution you have to transfer the ownership and things like that. So you assume that can be done.
Yes, let's take an example. So to illustrate the point Rishabh is mentioning, let us say you have the produce, you sown the seeds and it gave you really good produce. Government has given the good MSP, and now you are sure that you are not in a country where the government is going to default. But still you need to carry your produce and give it to the godown where they are receiving the goods. What if in the on the route itself the goods get looted, or let's say it catches fire and gets burnt up? Will you get money? No. What if let's say on the godown or wherever at your farm all the produce is ready, tomorrow you are going to transport it, but at night termites eat it, or let's say mouse eat it, or eats it, or something happens? Are you going to get the money? So just minimum support price or a similar deal is not sufficient. You need to make sure that all the uncertainties are resolved. Just one of the uncertainties resolved is not sufficient, is what I'm saying. When MSP is there, this uncertainty is resolved that my goods will be received and they will be received at this price. But whether you will be able to give the goods, there can be uncertainty regarding that also. समझ आ रहा है कि हो क्या रहा है? Are you guys understanding what just now happened? I'm just trying to imagine a situation. Okay. So just because one of the uncertainty was resolved doesn't mean that all the uncertainties are resolved. So you remember, what are we inherently in our back of mind? What are we even trying to ensure? We are trying to ensure point A is fulfilled and point B is fulfilled. What were our point A and B from yesterday's discussion? Seller's responsibility should be done and there should be no uncertainty about buyer's responsibility. Now in this example of MSP, just because MSP is there, definitely buyer's responsibility is fulfilled, or rather there is no uncertainty, but still you need to make sure that even point A is fulfilled. So maybe if, let's say, I have an MSP, on top of that, let's say I get my insurance cover for my produce, that for any damage after I have produced, let's say it catches fire, then somebody will pay me. Let's say rats eat it, somebody will pay me. Let's say it gets robbed during the transportation, somebody will pay me. Let's say after that I have made all this, so I have resolved even, let's say, seller's uncertainties, then I can go ahead and implement production method. Samajh mein aaya? What was the bottom line of this discussion? The bottom line of discussion was that make sure that both of these conditions are fulfilled, not just one. Fine. Okay. What about installment method? When can we use installment method?
So like lastly you have discussed one case of a ONGC. So there's an uncertainty of the machine procure. So, so procuring a machine will there's an uncertainty. So until unless we install that machine, we'll not able to complete the work. So in that case,
in that case, which method?
Go for install method.
Okay, fine. I will change the example here because in the previous example, the work spanned more than one accounting period. So these methods are not even relevant in those situations. Whenever the work spans more than one accounting period, you don't have these options available.
So, but why not the installment method? Sir, percentage method is similar, right?
Percentage method is similar but not same. Similar and same mein bahut difference hota hai. You guys remember that in percentage of completion method, what did we do? What expense did we subtract? Did we subtract 30% of the total? No, we subtracted actual, right? So let that be a separate method. Okay. So when
but then again, you had this cost recovery method where you are subtracting actual.
Okay, perfect. Then talk about cost recovery method. Don't talk about percentage of completion.
I'm saying, so in PCM, so you were percentage of recovery method. So what you were doing is you were subtracting the cost as and when it was actually incurred. In the cost recovery method, you're doing the same, but you're also recognizing the revenue in the periods in which you're receiving.
Okay.
So isn't it similar, sir, or nearly the same?
Okay. Things are similar or nearly the same may make a lot of difference. There, the thing was happening at that point of time was that you wanted to recognize the revenue because some portion of effort was happening in these periods. That is why you had those percentage of completion method. That you don't want to deal with a situation where all the work happened in these periods, but all the revenue happened in this. Otherwise, the true performance of business might not be available. This may make sense only when your work spans more than one accounting period. If your work is within one accounting period, then it's not even applicable. It's like, let's say you are comparing that, let's say I want to go from here to, let's say you want to, let's say you are thinking about transportation from, let's say some Kanyakumari to Andaman Nicobar Island, and you are thinking which car should I buy? There are no roads. The only option, the alternative is ocean and flight. So only among them you can compare. So that's what is happening here. These things are not even relevant in the case when the work spans more than one accounting period, and vice versa. Those two methods are not even relevant when the work is within one accounting period. Okay, so these two are useful tools in a different scenario altogether. That is why we are discussing them in this separation. Okay, so what do you do in a situation where work spans more than one accounting period? You have these two options to choose from: completed contract method and percentage of completion method. If you want, you can create a new variant of completed contract method wherein you will recognize the cost in the period in which it is incurred, if you want to be extra conservative, the way we did with cost recovery method. But that will be a new method. Now we are discussing about those situations where work does not span more than one accounting period, but still some of the things can span more than one accounting period. The order may be received in one period, the fulfillment of order may happen in different period. Now we can give them some credit period to give the payments, then the payments can happen in different accounting periods. So we need to look at these as a separate scenario altogether. This is a different scenario. And for these different scenarios, these are the three competing methods that are available with me. Now within these three, if I adopt installment method, if I adopt delivery method, if I adopt production method, is a different method. So just because there are some similarities with this method and some other, doesn't mean that we call them with the same name. Okay, because the situation itself is different. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. So delivery method is most frequently used method in the real life. It's like 85-90%. I don't know the real percentage, but it will be a really high percentage of real life scenario that this method is being followed. That the period in which you delivered the goods, you will recognize the revenue. And then this is what, in fact, this is what we have been doing so far. When we were preparing our account receivable, the moment you are treating account receivable means inherently you are assuming that we will get the money back. If not, then maybe we will prepare a provision for default or something. Fine. So delivery method is the most widely used one. When do we use installment? We use installment method when this particular point is questionable, that you are not sure whether the buyer will pay the money or not. If this doubt becomes really severe, that you are not sure at all that whether you will be getting any money back or not, then maybe you would want to adopt even stricter version and go to cost recovery method. Fine.
So just could you repeat the delivery method? You said when seller's obligation is complete and you assume that buyer will complete his obligation, right?
Yes, yes. When there is no doubt about buyer completing their obligation, then we adopt delivery method. Most of the situations in most of the business scenario, this is what is being found. That when you make the sale, you sell only to those parties from where you are reasonably certain that you will get the money. Otherwise, you would not even bother selling. But that is not always the case. You may still be selling to a place where you are not sure whether you will get the money back or not. Maybe you will keep your margins so high that, let's say, in any scenario, if I get some money back, then I will make huge profit. Okay. So in those situations, go ahead and adopt more stringent methods. Stringent in what context? Stringent as far as conservatism is concerned. So more conservative approach, that is installment approach method. If you think things are slightly doubtful, if things are too doubtful, then go ahead and adopt even more stringent approach, that is cost recovery method. Now, where do you draw the line? Once again, managerial discretion. That up to what level of uncertainty, or how do you even quantify the uncertainty, that nobody can tell you, because these are subjective things. But what should be the guiding principle? What should be the idea behind it? The idea behind it should be that the maximum amount of conservatism that we can deal with is we can adopt a cost recovery method. Then lower than that, we can adopt installment method. Even less conservative, we can adopt delivery method. Even less than that, we can adopt production method. Okay. Yeah. Questions? Go ahead. Someone was asking something.
No, I was going to ask you that a while ago we said that by consistency principle, let's say in that DLF project, sir, there are we can choose a different revenue recognition method for different projects, right?
Yes.
But we stick with that. So then when we see the ultimate revenue figure, sir, how do we know which method has been used and what is it really representing?
Yeah, good question. Everybody heard the question?
So because so my understanding is that
hold
they
on,
don't
hold on,
disclose
Richard.
the method, right?
अरे भावनाओं में मत बह जाओ. Let me bring the rest of the class also. What are you even talking about? So just repeat the question, because it's an interesting one. It's not a specific question. In fact, this question can be generalized to a great extent. That's why I'm asking you to repeat, so that the rest of the class can pay attention to what is being talked about here. So just repeat your question.
What I'm asking is that we have seen a number of methods like the ones that Sir just spoke about. However, in the previous example of the DLF project, Sir mentioned that consistency can be followed for different projects. You can have different revenue recognition methods, but in your income statement, you see one figure for revenue, but you don't know how that one figure has been arrived. It could have been arrived with 3, 4, 5 different methods running parallelly, or one particular method running for all the projects. So we've seen that in different methods, the profit is distributed in different ways. Like in a certain method, there's a huge jump in profit. In other methods, profit is evenly distributed. So you don't really know how the business is performing unless you know which revenue recognition method is used for which project. And so that was the question. So how do you know how the business is performing?
All of you got the question. What is he asking? He's asking, looking at the financial statement, how do I know which method has been followed? Is it important for me to know? Yes, that's what exactly we are demonstrating here. That just because of a difference of the method itself, the numbers will look different. Right? It so turns out that this entire course, its importance need to be understood in a correct perspective. This question is not only valid for now, it will be valid for throughout the course, for whatever methods or different techniques or different interpretations we are going to study. You will see that as a third party, all you know is those numbers. For example, you can go and go back and refer to Tata Motors ka income statement and balance sheet. Just some 6-7 lines are mentioned on the balance sheet, and similarly at max, let's say 20 lines. 20 lines on balance sheet and 20 lines, about 20 lines on income statement, right? Now, just in 20 lines, how am I going to figure out what's happening with Tata Motors is question. In revenue recognition itself, there is so many methods available. We will see just later on that in depreciation also there are different methods. In inventory, there are different methods. And in fact, the entire topic C, that is managerial discretion itself, is dedicated for us to demonstrate that so much discretion. Now, how are we going to figure out what's happening? That is the question. It so turns out that unfortunately, this course is not about answering, but rather asking correct questions. For example, if someone has given you a number, what are the questions you should be asking? If you can, of course. In some situations, in certain capacities. So you guys remember that when we started the course, I said that different stakeholders will be interested in the company. Now, some of these stakeholders cannot go back and ask any question to the company, but many of them can. What is the objective of this course is twofold. If you cannot ask a question from the company, what pinch of salt you should keep in mind? These are all pinch of salts that go ahead and figure out that what are they doing. If you can go ahead and ask a question to company, let's say you are the shareholder. Now somebody is presenting an income statement to you, and then they are saying that, look, our performance has improved tremendously. And inherently what is happening is that they are following a cost recovery method. If you follow the cost recovery method for the same company, how is the profit trend is going to look? Can you see for the same thing? A loss-making company has become a profit-making company now. Then it would seem, wow, what a tremendous job this guy has done. But for the same thing, if you would have followed a delivery method, you would have seen that, okay, this is your profit. Right? So what are we discussing here is that when somebody gives a number to you, you just don't get awestruck that, wow, what a tremendous thing. You would ask some relevant question that when they are presenting profit, you will ask, okay, tell me the revenue recognition principles that or practices that you have adopted. Similarly, in next 2-3 topics, we'll discuss a few more things. So what are the questions you should be asking? That is what we are discussing in this course. समझ में आया? So it's not like at the end of the day we will become Sherlock Holmes and we will be able to figure out everything that happens with the company. No, that's not what is going to happen. All that will happen is that looking at these things, we will know that these are the places in the income statement and in the balance sheet where the management could have played some discretion. And now if you want, go ahead and ask questions. Samajh mein aaya the relevance of all of this discussion? Okay, so keep this always in mind that this course is not too much about answering questions excuse me, and more about asking right questions. Fine. So let's go back. Yeah, go ahead.
So, to solve this problem, are there certain laws that for different industries which state that certain, out of let's say 6 methods, the company should follow either of the 3 methods for their revenue recognition? That will reduce the uncertainty when so a third party is looking at their financial statement, so they know it's one of these 3 methods, so it could be one of the 3 possible outcomes.
Okay,
is that kind of thing there?
Good question. So it so turns out, okay, long back I had given you, I think I had given you, because in generally I give this assignment, that go and look at any of the accounting standards. Have I ever told this to you? That go and look at something that is called an accounting standard? If yes, then definitely none of you have bothered to look at it so far. At some free time, or let's say if some of you are facing insomnia or something, then go ahead and download some accounting standards for any country and read a few pages. You're bound to fall asleep within next 2 minutes or 3 minutes. That's a separate usage of that thing. But what am I talking about is that there is a lengthy text that accounting bodies come up with, and they try to reduce uncertainty as much as possible. For example, let's say they will say that in this country, if these things happen, then you can only use this method. In this country, if these things happen, then you have a select choice of only these 2 methods among these 2 methods. So basically, they will try to reduce the flexibility. But what you can know for sure, in fact, if you ask all of your chartered accountant friends, or maybe some BCom guys, if they have been a little bit of extra studious, they would know that enormous amount of effort goes only in understanding these accounting standards, that what accounting bodies have provided as a law or a regulation, so that some flexibilities are reduced. But you will see that even after that humongous elaborated rules and reports, rules and regulations, still there is enough flexibility left with the management. Why is it left? Why not provide a rule? That would be an obvious question to ask. In that situation, we'll know for sure that this is what must have happened. The answer to this question is very simple, because one size cannot fit all. The situation will vary from company to company, within the same company from product to product, within the same product from market to market. You cannot prescribe one medicine to all the ailments. So a balance needs to be struck, and that balance is that we will try to have as elaborate rules and regulations, but still we need to leave some flexibility so that the correct position of the business can be reflected more appropriately. What is the bottom line of all of this? Bottom line of all of this is twofold. One is that all that you are going to get from this course is what questions to ask, and another is still there is some point in hiring those chartered accountants. Those guys are not fools who have spent 5 or 6 years of their life studying something. You just cannot be expected to get the same level of expertise in a 3 months period. Then what have they done? They have expertised themselves with the rules and regulations part as well. Here, what are we giving? We are just giving you the concepts, and I'm just indicating that, look, here there will be some rules. Look, there also there will be some rules or different alternatives available. Fine. So all that you are going to gain from this course is at what points to raise a question. Rules and regulations will try to reduce the scope of the flexibility, but it will not completely remove it. Fine. छोटा सा क्वेश्चन बड़ा सा आंसर, because this is more of an existential question कि हम कहाँ से आए हैं किधर जाएंगे types. Okay, so you should keep this in mind. Okay, yeah, any questions? Please look at something. कोई तो कुछ कमेंट में पूछ रहा है. Comments I don't read यार. So would the drug cartel use the cost recovery method to use account for its revenue. I'm using that. By drug cartel, you mean that legal drug cartel, not illegal drug cartels. Illegal drug cartels, I don't know. They can use the method of gunpoint. जिसके पास गन है, जिसने शूट कर दिया. Okay, I have no clue. What do you mean by your question? Drug cartel cost recovery method to account its revenue. I don't understand this question at all.
So I meant by the legal one, like would they use a very conservative approach to account for revenue? Because
illegal one accounting करो ही मत. That's what I would suggest. You better live a day कि कितने दिन पकड़े गए, क्या रहे, जिंदा बचे नहीं बचे. Okay, so the drug cartel and illegal and all these, ज़्यादा Hollywood movies मत देखो. So things will be much easier. Okay, let's get back to the discussion. Okay. Going concern may also be questionable, yeah, you know, that whether you are a going concern or not. So you may want to question your own possibility of surviving the next year. Let's go ahead. So the bottom line of all this discussion is that all that we are going to get is that what appropriate questions to ask. If you cannot ask questions, that what flexibility to keep in mind. You remember the first slide that we did, first caveat. We said that here people will be giving you numbers, but these numbers are not absolute truth. For example, for this company, even this number would be a truth, this number would be a truth, everything is a truth. But none of these is an absolute truth. So moment somebody throws a number to you, then you should understand that how much flexibility I should keep in my mind. ठीक है, समझ आया? Okay. Any more questions here? That what the methods say and how or when we are going to use them? All good? All good में हाँ बोलो या ना बोलो, घूरने से क्या समझ में आएगा मुझे?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So let's quickly discuss the case. Let me go check the time. How much time I'm left with? 20 minutes? Okay. So the last part of by the way, how many of you have read the case? Show me the raise of hands. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Some half hands. अच्छे से नहीं पढ़ा क्या? पूरा पढ़ा. Okay, fine. Enough numbers. So I can go ahead and discuss the case. So all those कुछ I hope कोई ऐसा ना हो जो कि वीडियो तो ऑफ कर रखा है और उसके पीछे हाथ उठा रहा है. I have no clue if you are raising your hands. Okay, let's quickly discuss this part. This case, I think I would suggest that one of the more interesting ones among all. So let's quickly discuss some of them as time permits. So last one we'll discuss first, the point number 10 here, computer system, because in some sense we have already discussed some part, wherein what is said is that there are two markets in which there is a computer company. It sells its products in two markets. One is, let's say, domestic market and one is an export market. For domestic market, they are following a delivery method. Now for export market, they say that our situation are not similar as the domestic market. In the export market, the credit worthiness or whether we will get the money or rather the buyer's obligation is questionable. So what shall we do? That's all they are asking. I think this part we have already answered, so I'll just make the sentence and go ahead. That just because you are following one method for one of the section doesn't mean that you have to necessarily follow the same method here. If the situation is different, use the different method. Just keep it in mind that year after year, you stick with consistently with the same arguments. That if the situation remains similar, you continue with the same method. If situation changes, then you give the disclosure and then shift the method. Okay? Clear? This is very simple one. So I'll just jump from here. So next one, I'll go back to number 3, point 3. So can someone give a very quick summary of what is being talked about in point 3, that is cruise? Just give a quick summary. What is the question here? Anyone means anyone. अभी तो हाथ उठा रहे थे कुछ लोग. या सुनीता बताओ. क्रूज में क्या लिखा है? What is being said?
Sir, I didn't read the case.
You didn't read the case. Okay, so all those who haven't read the case, now is the time that you can go and chill out in your life. फालतू का इधर बैठ के टाइम पास मत करो. Yeah, anyone quickly?
In this case, the space has been sold in advance, and they have incurred some expenses at the beginning.
Okay. Some expenses here. So basically, okay, yeah, just go ahead, complete your point, then I'll summarize it anyway.
Yes, so that's all I understood from that.
Oh, wow. Perfect. That is summary of a summary of a summary, maybe some 4-5 level of summary. No problem. I'll summarize it in more detail, whatever it means. Basically, what is happening here is that there is a cruise company. They have organized a cruise. When will the cruise happen? The cruise will happen in 2011. What have they done for this? They have already sold all the tickets in 2010. They have also done a lot of contracts. They have entered into the contracts that who will provide the ship, who will provide all the expenses, and all sorts of contracts in 2010 itself. So tickets are sold in 2010. Some contract from the suppliers and all those service people have been done in 2010, but the cruise will happen in 2011. Question is being asked is that in which year should this company recognize the revenue? In the year in which they have sold the ticket, or in the year in which the cruise will take place? That is the question. Any opinion here?
Sir, I think it has to be
So the
2011.
year in which the cruise will take place.
Okay, why?
2011.
2011.
Yeah, because the revenue would be for 2011 and not 2010, I think.
Okay,
Sorry,
fine.
in
There's a list of
2011.
tickets.
Okay, Bharat, go ahead, and then maybe.
Yeah, sir, it's possible that all the tickets might get cancelled, or there is high uncertainty.
Okay. So basically, let me bring us what Bharat is mentioning is possibility of cancellation. So let me deal with two variants of the contract. If you read the case, it is not mentioned whether the tickets are refundable or not refundable. Okay. Let us say situation A, that tickets are non-refundable, and situation B is tickets are refundable. I think situation B is much easier to understand. If tickets are refundable, when should you recognize the revenue?
When the service provider.
2011.
When the cruise will take place.
Okay, I think the entire class agrees. I think you, okay, fine. In case you have read the case, this part you would understand that they have sold the tickets. These tickets could be refundable or non-refundable, right? Refundable, non-refundable have the dictionary meaning here, no special hidden meaning, no accounting jargon. Now, how do things change when the tickets are non-refundable? Can I go ahead and recognize the revenue in 2010?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any
Sir,
counter?
you have not provided the service yet, right?
Yeah,
Why?
your obligation is not complete.
It will be added as a liability, sir.
Basically, it will be added as your liability. Your obligations are not complete. You have to provide services. Everywhere it is like an advance revenue. This is common across all. So if you remember, our criteria was point A and point B, that seller should have done their obligation and there should not be any uncertainty about buyer. So when tickets are non-refundable, all it means is that there is no uncertainty about buyer's responsibility. That's all. It doesn't mean that seller has fulfilled their responsibility. Do you understand? So even though the tickets are sold here, even though all the bookings are done here, you still need to wait for the day of performance of the duties. Why? Because both of these conditions need to be fulfilled in order for you to account something as revenue. Samajh mein aaya? So refundable, then also 2011, non-refundable, then also 2011. Does it sound logical to do, or just because we are blindly following certain criteria?
But sir, I think 2010 we can consider some certain portion of the revenue. How much of the figure I forgot. Because can you
Portion of
yes, like there was some uncertainty about the cruise will can be get it or not. There, forgot the case actually, but I think some portion of the revenue can be considered in 2010 for the
So basically, even I
non-refundable
had this doubt. Like we have put in some effort, right? So can't we recognize कि हमने 30% effort डाला and recognize 30% of the revenue?
Okay. So basically, the bottom line was that this case exactly, or rather, this caselet is exactly asking that question: that when did you put the effort of doing the sale? You put it in 2010. What was your job? Your job was to sell all those tickets. You have done that in 2010 itself. So the question Shovik and Jitendra are asking is that the effort was done in this year. Should we not recognize revenue in this year? Right? That is the point. Any opinion here to their questions? Anybody would want to respond to them? Yes or no, either case?
Sir, but there should be like a clear-cut calculation, or you need to say कि भैया 15% of the process was giving out tickets, or 20% of the process was giving out tickets.
Okay.
And how will you calculate that part?
Okay, fine. Anybody else? Question समझ में आया? What are we even asking?
So we cannot take it in the 2010 because it will be more or less the agriculture example that we have discussed. Like we have put all our efforts before harvesting in the previous financial year, but we have still not harvested, but we cannot account for the previous year just because we kept all our efforts there.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's exactly like the harvesting example. Just because you have put the seeds, just because the saplings are growing, doesn't mean that you are entitled to a revenue unless you get the produce. So that is exactly what it means, that accountants and some emotional fellow might want to tell you that, you know, our department, how hard they work, and you are showing no revenue. And then suddenly as a manager, you will have to answer them that why don't you show any revenue? You will say that I will not show any revenue because I'm not entitled to. Just because you put some effort, you are not automatically entitled to a revenue. Maybe you can put it in some equivalent of an asset like inventory somewhere. Whatever effort or cost you put you spend to put that effort. But unless you are entitled, unless you fulfill your responsibility, you are not entitled for the money. And whether things are refundable or non-refundable doesn't change a thing. Even if, let's say, tickets were not refundable, let's say you don't even organize the cruise. Can you get away with this? Non-refundable only means that buyers cannot come back and take their money back. It doesn't mean that you also cannot can get away very easily without even performing your duties. Okay? So refundable, non-refundable doesn't mean a thing. You haven't performed your duties, so you wait for your revenue recognition. ठीक है, समझ में आया? Just because some partial efforts have been done doesn't mean anything.
So what method are we following? Should we say completion contract method or delivery method here? Because can we say that does it make sense two accounting periods? So we can say that it is completion.
We are following delivery method. That it is in the period in which we perform the duty, we will recognize the revenue. Okay? Yeah. So that's about the cruise. Let us quickly discuss two more, time permitting. So let's discuss let's discuss number 6 now. Any questions meanwhile on point 3? Samajh mein aaya what happened? What happened is that you need to make sure that both the points are fulfilling, not just one point. Okay.
But sir, जब हम when we discuss about like making the bridge, right? So in that we say कि we constructed 30 pillars, we are supposed to construct 100. So even in that case, we haven't fulfilled our complete obligation, right?
Okay, good.
How do we use?
Good question. Anybody would want to respond to this? I will just repeat the question that Jitendra asked. When you were doing percentage of completion method, then you were recognizing things in proportion. Why didn't you recognize things in proportion here? Is his question.
So I think in the bridge case, the main objective is of course the completion of bridge, but at least the part of completion is visible, because if we complete 30% of the bridge, that is visible here. But in this case, the main objective is the cruise, the whatever they have planned it for 2011. Even if you have done everything, it's not visible. We can say not even 1% completed objective.
It's not just about being visible, it's about can you claim that this much percent of work is complete. In case of a cruise, you cannot say that 30% of work is complete when you have sold the tickets. Okay, so that is the reason why we cannot claim this as in a similar manner as percentage of completion. Okay, these are different steps. Just hold on, different steps does not mean that you can call them as 100% and then let's say of them, let's say you have taken 90 steps, so you can claim that 90% of the work is done. Here, the job was not to your obligation is not to sell the tickets. To get the revenue, these were the steps involved. But what is your obligation? Your obligation is to do the cruise. Let's say the cruise itself would have taken some 5 years to complete, and let's say of that 30% is done. Then you can go ahead and adopt percentage of completion, because the job itself is 30% complete. समझ में आया difference?
So can we look this from buyer's perspective? For example, for the bridge.
It's only from buyer's perspective. Yes, it is from buyer's perspective. That's what I am trying to tell. Yeah, Manu, go ahead. Tell your point.
So like if the cruise was for 10 months, so could we like recognize revenue after like a month, like 1 month, 2 months?
Yes, that's exactly what I just now said. Yeah. Thanks for that point. So let's say you are preparing monthly statement and cruise is for 10 months. Then you can break them into parts. Then it's all right. Why? Because the cruise itself is your deliverable, and deliverable itself is getting delivered in parts. So then it is percentage of completion is all right. Fine. Okay. It's like otherwise you will start breaking things into कि हमने business setup किया तो भी तो हमने some part of the steps we have taken up, right? Otherwise हम business ही नहीं setup करते तो cruise होता कैसे? So now I want to recognize all the future possible revenue in infinite years. जो इसका कुछ कर दिया है तो इसका कोई end नहीं है. Okay, so when we talk about percentage of completion not from your perspective but from the perspective of what you are delivering. Of that deliverable, whatever percent is complete, if there is some percentage that you can deem it to be completed, then you can go ahead and adopt this percentage. Okay. Okay. Any more questions here? Fine. So let's go to point number 6. Someone quickly, can you just give us a quick summary of what is there in point 6? See, why am I even asking you to give a summary is that I want to understand that whether you guys have read it and understood what is there in case. It's not that I don't know or I can't give a summary. So अगर तुम लोगों ने पढ़ा ही नहीं है और तुमको पता ही नहीं है, then it will be just a waste of my time. इसलिए मैं पूछता हूँ. So someone just go ahead and give a quick summary if you know. If nobody knows means.
So basically they sell I don't know something, a coffee jar with at a price of $2.5. They attach a coupon with it, which can be redeemed to purchase another thing which costs $2. And when someone does that, they give 60 cents to the whoever.
Now, not even important. Just raise the question. What is the question being asked?
So question is ki earlier we have seen ki 20% redemption. Like we have 20% redemption rates. Right now it has 10%. Like what should we do?
Okay, fine. That's not exactly the question. The question is that let's say this company has two products. One is a coffee. Let's say this is their coffee product. Let's say this is packet of coffee. And let's say they have a tea packet. Okay, let's say this is their tea packet. Now what is being happening here is that on sale of coffee product, they are attaching a coupon. Let's say 2 rupee coupon. Let me make my own numbers just so that the case becomes a little bit simplified. Let's say every coffee packet was sold for 50 rupees per packet and every tea packet was sold for 15 rupees per packet. What they have done is that on every coffee packet, they have attached a 2 rupee coupon. What does the coupon do? That if you buy their tea packets, then now you can redeem this coupon and get a 2 rupee discount. So you will end up spending only 13 rupees on the tea purchase. The question is being asked is that you have spent 2 rupees as a promotional activity. Now, in which department should you charge 2 rupees? Should you charge in tea or should you charge in coffee is the question. So before the question, is it even needed? Do we need this bifurcation that do we need to resolve this, that should it be charged at tea or coffee? Does it even matter? Does this information matter? My question.
Yes, sir. If,
Yes, sir.
if in the company, if tea or coffee division is separate, then to perform their performance, I think it is needed.
Okay, so basically administratively, if you have kept the division separate, then information is needed. Otherwise not. Okay, fine. Anybody else?
So
Even to assess the performance of both tea and coffee
You need
selling.
to know the performance of both. Why do you need to know the performance of both? Because of plenty of the reasons. You may want to promote coffee. Let's say you may want to contract the scale of tea, or you may want to put additional staff in tea or in coffee. You might want to, as a management, you might want to take plenty of decisions. Unless you know that which division is exactly bringing me what profit, you might not be able to take these decisions efficiently. Right? Yeah, similar, someone may want to, you may want to sell the tea division to somebody else, or you may want to buy similar division from somebody else for plenty of reasons, innumerable reasons. You want to know their performance separately. Why? For decision making. Now, this is immaterial whether you have separate administrative divisions set up for them or not. That is immaterial. Let's say everything is in the same division and in the same roof, you are performing both the divisions. Even then, you would want to know this difference. That is point number one. Let's come back to point number two, which is the moot question here is that which division should I subtract this 2 rupees of charge? Tea or coffee? Yeah. Go ahead, give us your opinions.
Sir, coffee because
Coffee.
Okay,
because it is acting as a promotional activity, so it is an expense for coffee.
Okay, because it's a promotional activity and it's stuck at coffee, so that's why coffee. Okay, anybody else?
Sir, it is a promotion for tea. So
It is promotion of tea, that is why you should subtract it from tea. Okay, any other opinion?
Sir, that rupees 2 is getting subtracted from the coffee revenues, right? Like we are.
That's the question I'm asking. So you are answering same question.
So
this investment will lead to increase in tea revenue. So I think.
Okay, so tea is getting promoted. That is why. Okay, fine. Anybody else? Any other point?
So tea, because if you sell lots of coffee, then ultimately your revenue for tea goes into negative. So.
Okay, perfect. So this point I want somebody to respond from the class itself. This is a very interesting point which has brought that if you sell too much of a coffee, suddenly revenue of tea becomes negative. Is it a valid point to make?
No, sir. So the coupon may not be redeemed.
No, only $0.5 will be reduced.
See, basically, you need to understand that how much of a coupon value would you be giving? If you are selling the tea for 15 rupees and on that you are giving 2 rupee of a coupon, what do you think they would be spending to manufacture tea? What should be the cost or expense? What do you think it's going to be?
Less than 2.
It is definitely going to be less than 30. Because even at reduced price, why do you even give coupons? Basically, you want to increase the volume. It is like right now we were selling, let's say 15 rupees per packet, and let's say we were selling 100 packets. So our revenue was 1500, and for that, let's say our cost was 10 rupee per packet. So let's say this was my profit so far. So 500 ka profit. My objective of giving a coupon is that if I give a discount, let's say my sale would increase from 100 to 1000. Basically, you want to boost up the scale. You don't want to, it's not like you have a nasha for incurring losses. That if you incur losses, suddenly you feel some kick out of it. No, that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it so that total profit gets increased. So that maybe let's say the volume goes to 1000, then 13 rupees per packet and 1000. What are you what is your total revenue now? 13,000. And what is your cost now? 10,000. Now how much profit you are making? 3,000. This is the reason why you are giving coupons. समझ में आया? That even though you are earning per packet a little lesser now after the discount, just because number of packet itself have increased, the total profit has gone up. Unless you are giving coupon for this reason, I don't know why you are even running a business. You want to increase your profit. That is why you are giving them incentive that buy more from us. So the point being that if they sell too many coffees, then suddenly you will start incurring losses. It's not going to happen. Why? Because this is an inherent assumption is that the coupon value is going to be only that much. That is going to be our that reduced price is going to be still higher than the cost we are incurring. Otherwise, we will start shelling out money from our pocket. It may not be true for an year. It may not be true for a 6 months or something, but in long term, it will be true. Okay, fine. So let's go back to our discussion. Any reason? Okay. So people have given different reasons. Some people have said that it should be subtracted from coffee. Why? Because this is where the coupon is getting released. And some people have said that it should be subtracted from tea because this is the product that is getting promoted. Let me ask a counter question. So I haven't even answered this one. I'll confuse you even further. How things would change if I stuck the coupon and on tea, and when you buy coffee, you get the discount? Is it possible in real life? Can somebody do it? My life, my rules, right? So my product, my choice, where I stuck the coupon. Let's say I ended up sticking the coupon on tea packets. Will the things change? Or it doesn't matter? Question समझ में आ रहा है? Answer छोड़ दो. What is the scenario I'm talking about? That part is okay. Now let's let your imagination go wild. What do you think? Nothing changes, something changes, what happens?
Sir, can you repeat the question? Like, are you giving the promotion for coffee?
I don't know. I didn't say that. All I said is that in the same case, now I'm changing the information just this bit, that the coupon is now not stuck on the coffee packet, rather it is stuck on the tea packet. And all the remaining details remain as it is. Now what changes, or if nothing, why nothing changes? What is happening here? Any opinions? Yeah. Sunita, aap to bata do. Now we have read the case for you. Give me your opinion. Does anything change? Question समझ में आ गया? What am I asking? Okay. In case you are thinking that things are too abstract, I will make it even easier for you. Okay. इससे easy नहीं बना सकते. Let me make it very easy. Suddenly the finance course will become a marketing course. Let's say we are talking about Maggi. Maggi सुना सब लोगों ने? I'm believing that most of you are still bachelors and many of you would be hostelers. So staple diet. Let's say we are talking about Maggi masala noodles. Okay. And also we are talking about, let's say, soup sachet. So let's say these are the two products that Maggi has. Let us say the Maggi comes up with, okay, let me fix some prices for these. Let's say one packet of masala noodle is available for 12 rupees. And one packet of soup is, let's say, available for 7 rupees. Okay. It so turns out that if in any class, I can imagine any price of soup, nobody objects ever. But one time it so happened that I put this price as 10 rupees, then suddenly there was a revolt in the class. Sir, put it 12 rupees. That's how important Maggi noodles are for all the hustlers out there. But jokes apart, let's say Maggi noodle, one packet is available at 12 rupees and soup sachet is available at 7 rupees. Both of these are Maggi products. Now Maggi comes up with a promotional activity that a 2 rupee coupon is stuck on a packet of Maggi noodles. And that says what? That if you buy soup, then you can redeem this coupon and get a 2 rupee discount. Now the question remains same. All I have done is that I have given you a real life example so that you can relate to the things and answer it. Where should I subtract the expense of this promotional activity?
So it has to be on soup, because your main objective is to increase sales of soup and you are ready to incur 2 rupees loss.
So this part we have already discussed in the previous case. So in our previous example, Maggi noodles was equivalent of the coffee and soup was equivalent of tea. Now I will ask the second question that I was asking to you. What if I reverse the situation, that now a 2 rupee sachet is stuck on soup packets, which says that if you buy masala noodles, you can redeem this coupon and get a 2 rupee discount on masala noodles. Now where will I subtract the promotional activity expense? Yeah. Now Sunita, अब तो बता दो. इससे easy कुछ नहीं हो सकता life में, बताओ.
Sir, like here, Maggi noodles is still preferable. So, like because like in case of soup, it is not like getting sold as much as compared to Maggi noodles. So I think it will still be with the like soup.
Yeah, you guys agree?
Yes, sir.
That's exactly what is the concept, or what is the driving force which will decide. It so turns out that in this situation, we should need to identify what is the reason why you incurred this promotional activity. Let's call it advertisement expense or promotional activity. Which product is it promoting? Whichever product it is promoting, irrespective of where the coupon is stuck, if there in both the cases, if soup is getting promoted, then we will subtract the expenses from soup itself, immaterial of whether the coupon is stuck here or here. Fine. If both the products are new and you don't know which one is getting promoted, maybe you would want to give them equal weightage. Or maybe you want to give the weightage in number of in ratio of their total revenue. But if definitely one of these products are promoted, or the idea is to promote one of these products using another established product, then always charge the promotional activity from the product in which is getting promoted. So in our case, where should we subtract it? In the case that is being given in the book, you'll be able to answer this only with that coffee, because they mentioned that coffee is their established product. So it doesn't matter at all that where is the coupon stuck. You will always subtract the promotional expenses from the tea revenue, because this is the purpose for which the promotional activities are incurred. ठीक है? समझ आया? All good? Okay, perfect. So I would have wanted to discuss one more, that is point 5 here, unbilled receivables. But as I have ran out of time, so I will leave it as it is. Also because one of the reason is because I could not discuss it in the other section. So I want to keep everybody at par. So unbilled receivable, just read it. In fact, rest of the things, read it and form your own opinion. If there are questions, we'll discuss it. Otherwise, from the next class onward, we'll start a new topic, that is long-term assets. Okay, fine. Any questions up till this part from what we have already discussed? Any questions? All good? Sab samajh mein aa gaya? Life is chill?
Sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
So will we only expense the redeemable coupons amount, that only the redeemed coupons are expensed, or the whole coupon amount?
Okay, good. I think that is the easier of the question. Anybody would want to respond to this? Let's say you have sold, let's say you are giving 2 rupee ka discount and you sold 500 packets of coffee. So how many coupons did you issue? You would have issued 500 into 2, these many total value ka coupons. Let's say of that only 20% have come back to redeem. Aditya is asking that what should you treat as an expense? Should you treat this entire money as an expense, or should you treat only 20% as an expense?
Only 20%.
That should be very obvious, only 20%. If more people come, then even that you show as an expense. Okay, just because I promised that I will make you king of the universe, unless I make you king of the universe, you don't get anything from me. So that's what is happening here. That here they have just promised that they will give you a discount. Nobody comes and collects it. That means there is no expense. So expense हुआ ही नहीं तो उसको मत show. Fine.
So, but will you consider it an expense once it comes in, or like would you keep a provision?
Yes, you can keep a provision for. That's what the question is asking. So, question is saying that let us say our estimate is that 20% of the people will come to redeem it. So, for 20%, we will provide the expense in this period itself. But let's say our anticipation was 20%, but just because of time lag, so far only let's say 5% have come. So it will be like, let's say, what is this number? Let me deal with the numbers. So 1000 was the total. 1000 was the total value for which you have issued the coupons. You thought that of this only 200 will materialize. So the entry you will pass is promotional activity expense. Promotional activity expense debit 200. Of which, let's say, they have already come to collect what you can say, so let me do the sale. So sale value, I'll need to assume a sale value. So let's say sale value here is how many packets? 5% of this. So how many packets? 5 into 500 packets here. So how many packets? What did I assume as price of coffee? I assume price of coffee, tea somewhere back, 15 rupees per packet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's say I end up selling out of, so this 200 represents 100 coupons of 2 rupees each. So let's say of this 100, which I think that people will be coming back to me. Let's say only 5% of that has come back to me so far. That is 5% of 100 is what? Sorry, this is not 5%. This is 20% के respect में 5%. So this is 1/4. So let's say so far only 25 guys have come back to me. So I'm just working with the numbers. So my sale revenue will be 25 into 15. And against that, I want to recognize the promotional activity. Okay. So promotional activity will be sales revenue. I know I'm confusing you with these numbers. Sales revenue expense. Sales revenue is 15 into 25. 25 into 15. And this entire thing will become an expense. And you will also create a provision. You will create a provision for the difference. So of this 200, only 15 into 2, that is, sorry, 25 into 2, that is 50 rupees was for this particular lot that has been actually realized. Remaining will sit in provision. So provision for coupon, you will credit by the remaining amount, that is 150. Okay, for rest of the difference amount you would have received cash. So the difference will be cash debit. What happened just now here? What happened is, in a nutshell, this is what happened. That you thought 100 people will come to redeem. 100 people will come to redeem what value? 2 rupees per. So total redemption will be 200. But so far, only 25 people have come back to us to redeem 50 rupees. So this 50 I will show as an expense anyway, which will have a corresponding sales entry. Sorry, here it is, which will have a corresponding sales entry. And remaining 150, what you will do? Remaining 150 ka you will create a provision. Fine. Any more questions? This last part, if you understood, good. If you did not a problem. If you conceptually understood that what we will do for the portion which people have already redeemed, that will become an expense. For portion which you think people will be redeeming, that will also become an expense, but you will create a provision for this. Why? Because people have not yet come to you. So you are still hoping that in next year I will be incurring 150 rupees in future. Okay. Any more questions? क्लास के एंड में ऐसे क्वेश्चन नहीं पूछने चाहिए, जनता डर गई. I can see the faces being scared. ये लास्ट वाला नहीं समझ में आया, don't bother too much. Just keep this in mind कि जो कर दिया उसके लिए एक्सपेंस बन गया, जो नहीं किया उसके लिए प्रोविजन बना के रख दें, because you are anticipating that you will be spending something in future. Fine. Okay, so what's your homework? Homework is very small, that read at least 0.5 in this caselet and form an opinion. I would say ideally read all of them and form your opinion. But in case there are any questions about this or for any of the part that we have done so far, that we will take up in the next class, else we will start a new topic that is called long-term assets. Okay, that's all. See you guys the next time. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
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 Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.